Before the hour 8 o'clock, we do apologize for that abrupt discard of things. We just had some technical glitches, but we're back and we're ready to have this conversation going on. Mr. Makopo, you were still saying, sir.
Okay, yes. I was saying my story, it's quite so unique. But even though like most of the things back then, they didn't make sense to me, I only realize now that they were bound to happen so that I can be the person that I am today. Firstly, I can say I never had a chance to be a child.
Oh.
And just from my mother's womb forward, there were a lot of things that I experienced. And now the question is, how on earth you just arrived as a kid, and now you just have to fight and battle the world's biggest enemy.
And with that, I always say, when I'm going through the most difficult times of my life, I always say, is this the life that I kicked my mother's home before?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel like have you ever been in a fight whereby you feel like the only option that you have is just to fight with one hand, because the other one you will be wiping tears. But now, the biggest part of the whole thing is this. Now you ask yourself, I just arrived here and I'm still a kid, and all what I facing is just the devil, and it attacks you so significantly. Now, but back then, most of the things when they do happen, they don't make sense at that time. And I always encourage people to say, you just have to go through whatever, and then so that you it will make sense later.
Definitely.
So yes. So I grew up with rejection. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, and then what happened is we never had peace. My parents were always fighting.
Family dynamics.
Yes, and I will try to cut the whole story short because it's quite long.
Yeah, true.
To be quite honest, and then I cannot compress them. I mean, in a very short space of time. And then what happened, fast forward, is then there was a day when, this is how I grew up. The reason why I'm saying I did not have a chance to be a child, it's because at a very early age, I had to go and work. Me and my brother, we had to go and work, especially during school holidays at the primary level.
Yeah.
And then, Nerberka Kudi Plus in Chaco Mablo.
Oh, yes.
Around Mablo, Bobby Kudi Furu, by Lord, they are familiar with that place. And then here's the thing, other kids are playing around, but when are you busy? You have to go and work. And then Utushe Mamao or Rahono Letrokomel.
Yeah.
So and then fast forward, but now during when the schools are in motion, what happens is Otagram Maka, she will go and buy some vegetables so that Arbas go low, and then we will go all around and ready rekish.
The veg. Yeah. Also, Jangove, they push them with trolleys. The veg.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I must be quite honest that to me, that time it was not entrepreneurial, and I cannot lie to say that's how I developed the spirit of entrepreneurship. It was just the issue of surviving. You see?
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 1998, and there was a rumor that my father wants to commit a family suicide. I'm not sure if that's the right word, family suicide, but actually he wanted to actually shut the whole world around, kill his own kids, kill the wife, kill himself, because of the things that we were going through at that time as a family. And remember that day like it was yesterday, and somehow we were moved, and after 3 days then we were moved to the Hampatlele. That's where I did my secondary level.
Secondary.
My whole primary part was on the other side of Haramishivo ko Hampatlele ko Mpumalanga. So then I had to go to Hampatlele. I had to leave the school in the middle, and because Nekelo Tlakanang High School 98, then we had to leave the school in the middle, and then so we had to go back and restart again 1999. But now to me it was that thing to say, even though we never had a chance to say goodbye to most of the people, because that's where our life was, and now we had to go to the other side with the hope that things will get much better on the other side, only to realize that things were going to be worse.
Ooh.
And then,
From the pot into the fire.
yes, and it was just so worse until 99 when I decided to say no. I think it was on the 9th of August, on Women's Day. Then I decided, because the thing is this, Mr. Madisha, I can't even remember. It's so hard to remember the day when, like, you will just walk around not having this heavy heart with you. And you're carrying so much heavy heart, so much anger around you. And nothing makes sense. And then what happens is this, you start questioning yourself. You have this quest to say, but what's wrong with my family? What's wrong with me? And if Mudimuteng, how can he let me to go through all these things?
Yeah.
And then there was a day when I decided to say, okay, now let me just go back and where I grew up, and maybe if I can find my father, and then maybe life will be better again. And so I didn't manage, and my mom, Naberka Kodi Plus, and they called her, and then a half fitla. That's when it was the time when I tried to go back to
that place.
Yes. And when my mom came, it was such an emotional day to me. And I think that was the day when, one of the days that I will never forget. And then she said to me, my son, I wish I can give you something for you not to leave. I know what you're going through. It's so tough here than where we're coming from. But I wish I can give you something. But now I just want to know if I can manage to get you a temporary shelter. And then, because that time we were staying, it was a family house, staying with grandparents and with your other
Bana ba malume,
yeah,
bana ba
exactly.
rakgadi.
Bana ba bomane, yeah. And what she said to me, she said, because I want you to do the biggest favor. I need your favor. Because I cannot promise you anything. I know I don't have anything now that I can promise you. But if I can organize a temporary shelter, can you please promise me to, or you will stay, you won't leave, and you will finish your matric. And if you can just finish the matric, then I will be fine. And to me, it was such a painful moment at the same time. I mean, looking at your mom going through a lot of things, and here she says, no, please don't leave.
Fetsa matric.
Just fetsa matric. Now, it took me another 4 years contemplating to leave. It was so tough because even in the process, I was even thinking, okay, why don't I just kill myself and just disappear out of this world? Because it seems like I'm taking more punches almost every day. And the biggest one was this, whereby you're the least of them all in the society. You are nothing. And other people, they make you feel, or you don't actually fit into their standards. So the amount of rejection. And now what happened is I pushed until grade 10, I think. Yeah, standard 8 back then. And then I passed standard 8. Then grade 11, then I decided to say no. I think it was on the 31st of May, on Friday. And then I said, you know what, I can't take this thing anymore. This is way too much. Since I was born until now, I think the only way for me is just to leave the school. As much as I tried to say I will stay on, and the only way for me now is just to leave the school. And because of the life circumstances back then I've decided to say, no, okay, let me just leave the school. And that was my highest education level. And I left the school. I went back, Kodi Plusing, and I joined my brother and my mom. And then I started working there, Kodi Plusing. And like they say, the rest is history.
True.
Now, fast forward, that was 2022. And then 2023, then I've decided to say, okay, let me go and start my own life. Kante, I did not know I'm actually embarking on a journey. And this was God assigned. And when I went into that journey, it was actually kind of like a wilderness. Then I made sure that I don't tell anyone around me. And then that's when I became a hobo, a homeless person, what you call the homeless person. Then I decided, I said, okay, do you know what? I think this is the only way if I can just have to live my life. And then if you know Papsfontein, somewhere between Brongorspreid and Le Binoni, Twata side. And that's where I went there and started my life there and as a homeless person. But what I did is I was always acting the situation out to try and just pull the strong face and pretend. I was always in a false pretense so that people cannot see what I'm going through. And then I think I've been a homeless person for 3 years, just sleeping almost everywhere, trying to find life. And it was difficult. And I remember most of the time I would walk from Papsfontein to Binoni, to the lakeside, and trying to find something to survive. And that was the most painful journey ever. But at the moment, I do understand why I had to go through all those things. Yes. I'm not such a spiritual person sometimes, but what I do is, I remember the journey of Moses when God said to him, I want you to go before the people. Some of the things you only realize them later. Then when God said, I want you to go before these people, I think God was doing that so that he knew that most of the people that Moses was leading, they were complaining almost every now and then to him. And now for Moses to be before them, whenever they face things as a leader, now you are able to say, you know what, I've been there, I've done that. And I know how it feels.
Sure.
Yes.
Definitely one of the saddest stories one could definitely take. I don't want to lie. But definitely 8 o'clock. We're definitely going to take a quick break. And when we come back from that, I want us to then delve deep into the starting of the first company and also try to give, ways on how then people can awake from that and eventually become a man that has owned 8 companies. Turn them into one thing and make this Makopo Holdings. Definitely take a quick break, and when we come back from that, we're getting into the matter of the heart, the spirit of this show. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Groundbreakers. 55 minutes after the hour, 8 o'clock, and let me remind you that if you just tuned in into your radio station, you are listening to TVT FM 96.2, amplifying voices, empowering lives, and this is the Groundbreakers, the first edition of a Plugger Graduate in the year 2025, and we are still speaking to Mr. Kabelo John Makopo, who's then the founder and CEO of Makopo Holdings. Mr. Makopo, very sad story that you were then explaining, but want to bring in the heart of this conversation, which is then trying by all necessary means to give new graduates the skills that they might need to go into that. So we definitely have know that South Africa has made significant strides in terms of improving its education system, right?
Yes.
Such as expanding proper pro-poor policies and rolling out preschool programs. However, the country still faces challenges in learning outcomes. Now, Makopo Holding has subsidiaries that employ hundreds of people. From your perspective, has there been a gap, between the skills and knowledge your potential employees possessed and the industry demands?
Yes, I'm not sure if I get the gist of your question very well.
So let me try to put it properly so that your perspective, right?
Yes.
Has there been a gap between the skills and knowledge your potential employees has then, possessed and the industry demands? So between the industry demands and those skills and knowledges that they have possessed.
Yeah, given the so many businesses that I've established this far.
A lot.
But I can say, let me start by what you just said, to say South Africa have done strives to try and come up with the policies that are so pro-poor. And I would like to actually be so grateful without being political. Yeah. And I want to be very much grateful for what actually the government did. I mean, in a way that especially after 1994, what they did is, we all know that most of the black people, or should I say, the Africans, were so marginalized, and the systems of the day did not allow, or were not that conducive for any black person to make some strides in any industry,
become something.
and become something. And it was such a systematic thing. It was a systematic racism. So the reason why I say I want to be, let me start by being grateful, it's because I know I'm the function of God's grace.
Yeah.
Because anyway, some of the things we all know that it takes beyond human power for you to amass such great things. More especially if you are in industries that require you to have some degrees and qualifications and everything. And then here you are, and your highest level of education is matric.
Yeah.
But now, amongst your employees, you do have those that you employed that are so highly qualified, that are here to come and help you to manage the growth of your business.
Yeah.
Yes. And then now, in a quest to try to redress the economic exclusions or the economic injustices of the past, now government came up with this legislative frameworks like PEE to try and say, okay, can we build an inclusive economy for everyone, both blacks and then everyone who's living in this country.
Yeah.
So now I took advantage of that. And what happened with my first company is, while I was still a homeless person, I used to listen to people that inspired me the most. One of them being Ezra Mdwandwe, Given Makari. I think there was a show called Given Makari Show on Metro FM.
Okay.
And it was a business show. Then from there, and I used to read newspapers and the Sunday Times, and especially the business section. That's how I developed this entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Fast forward, then I was still a garden boy. And when I was a garden boy at Go Pyramid, my employer then, who played a very significant role in my life, because that's where I started Makopo Holdings when I was still working for him as a garden boy. Because my whole life, I don't have a special skill or a formal training. I've never been to university or any college or whatsoever. So, but back then, what I did, I used to read some books, and he used to inspire me. And I used to tell him to say, because he owned a veterinary clinic, he's a qualified veterinary doctor.
Yeah.
And then he used to buy me books, and one of the books was Cultivating the Culture of Success. And I think that's when I developed wings, and then I became so much entrepreneurial. And then I was saying, okay, but when will I start?
Yeah.
Fast forward 2015, that's when I gave birth, because I was so much pregnant with a lot of ideas.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But the biggest challenge is the hurdle number one that I had to jump was, okay, how do I go about starting a business? And sometimes you have this thing in you to say, but what if there's the fear of unknown?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm still coming to your question.
Yeah.
Of is there any skills gap?
Yeah.
Yes. And what happened is this: 2015, I registered the company, but just because I did not have the skill, because it's not everything, and this is the motivation that I will give to the graduates to say you have to start somewhere.
True.
Don't be discouraged if you studied for this and now
eventually find yourself doing something
eventually
else.
You find yourself somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes. And then what happened is, what I did, I then registered Makopo Holdings in 2015, but with a bigger picture, because I had this mental picture in me to say, I want to start and do business, because to me it was not a matter of me making money or surviving out of the business. To me, it was to say, I want to be like those who were able to build long-lasting businesses that outlived them.
Yeah.
This legacy
Empires,
businesses.
business empires.
The empires.
Yeah.
Yes. But now, Mr. Madisha, how do you do that? If, number one, you don't have skills, you're not trained in anything. So I think I was fortunate enough. I met the gentleman called Mr. Mohammed. It's Mr. Mohammed Asif Qasim. Such a remarkable guy with a beautiful heart. And that was a turnaround in my life. He owns some few factories. He's in multi industries. And we met because in between, it's just that I did not tell you that there was a gap when I had to go and work somewhere. And then I worked for different industries, but mostly as a cleaner and so on, until I worked for BMW Komantana. And then that's when I met
Mr.
Mohammed, because I used to be a shop steward. And I used to be this vocal, vibrant shop steward. And that time I thought, if you are a shop steward, you must be the enemy
of clients.
Of the employers. Yes. And then what happened is I was very problematic, I must say. And I think I was the first to actually take in the history of that company to take almost half of the staff to the strike just to disrupt the production, which is something that I am not proud of today. But those were the learning curves, and the company successfully, after they failed so many times to get rid of me, but successfully they got rid of me.
Yeah.
Yes, which was a blessing in disguise.
True.
And
we couldn't have Makopo Holdings if it wasn't that case.
Exactly. But the thing is, me holding in there, I was that kind of a shop steward. I practiced labor law a lot, and I ended up being a recruiter at NUMSA because I had so much relationship with NUMSA. Then I worked for a union for some time on a fixed term contract. But I learned a lot of things about labor legislation and everything. Then how did I meet Mr. Mohammed? His company was embarking on the provisions of Section 189. In simple terms, they were retrenching. And then I was one of the observers there. And that's when he have seen that, okay, but this guy is just a bunch of, he's a bunch of brains.
Yeah.
And that time I was unemployed. I was going there on voluntary basis. And that's how I met him. And then he said to me, do you have a company? I said, no. And then he said, why don't you register one? And somehow I knew that it was that time for me
to give birth,
to give birth to Makopo Holdings.
Yeah.
And then, like they say, the rest is history. Then I registered Makopo Holdings. Even though Unica, his company, it's Unica Iron and Steel, it's based in Hammanskraal. And even though they are the main reason why we do exist, because if it was not him, we wouldn't be where we are today.
I definitely have to give it to you that you are also a man with a bunch of brains, having to done that all of those things in a very short period of time. Come to the following question to say now, we know that enhancing education systems can then help bridge those skill gaps, by ensuring that students acquire the necessary skills and knowledge to meet the demands of the job market. But now, how can enhancing education systems contribute to bridging that gap?
I think the education system can play a very pivotal role, but the biggest challenge is I think our economy now plays a lot of jobs in the market, and we produce a lot of graduates, and most of them, they just wish if they can have that, a platform whereby they can just gain the skills.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or even implement what they've been taught at school.
Yes, or even be able to implement what they have been taught at schools. I'm not an expert, but I always hear people saying our education system actually does not prepare graduates to be work ready most of the time. And But what I can say is our education system plays a very pivotal role in a way that I've seen most people, especially myself, with lack of education, you find that you do a lot of mistakes. And that's where the education comes in. I think one day I had I had this a conversation with Mr. Isaac, and then I was saying to him, you know what, the education system, believe me, it's quite so important when it comes to making sure we produce good graduates. But the thing is, sometimes it's not like we lack the skill, but the thing is, we don't have platforms where platforms where this graduates can go.
Yeah.
And then I think it's up to each and every one of us to actually create those platforms for the students. Yeah. It's just that somehow maybe I don't understand your question, but now if you can just try to put it the other way, maybe I will understand.
I will definitely break it down.
Yes.
Coming in, let me take this question coming in from our listener. And now they're saying that your story is quite touchy. And I believe there is someone who can then relate out there. But given the opportunity then to go back and study, would you go back, and why?
Yeah, I will go and study because the thing, Mr. Tabo, I've seen myself doing a lot of mistakes. Because, and somehow I attribute, because I failed so many times. There are businesses that I closed before, and you can see that if I had the education or the skill to do those things, I think I was supposed to be somewhere. I think somehow, I need to go back there. What I did, I think just before COVID, I went back and I did my matric. Just right here in Soshanguve. I did it through ABET system.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And then I tried to go to Damelin, so that, because I realized that, it's not that easy to navigate a complex world of business without you having some skills, because you can't be at the helm of any business or organization without education. So now your question is, if I can have a chance to go back there,
Yeah.
I will to go to school. I will definitely do that. I always want to go back there. In the meantime, what I do, everything is self-taught. It's not like I'm just sitting. What I do, I teach myself. I read management books, and whatever that I learn, and then I put them in practice. But the most important thing, what I encourage people, especially entrepreneurs who own businesses and they never had a chance to go to school, I think the best way is to go back to school. So that's what I do. So I tried to go to Damelin. It's just that I didn't have time that time. I had a lot of things on my plate, and that time I think I did the short course of what was that, small business management, but I didn't finish. And then, but when I was busy running the business, I did a lot of mistakes. We grew, my company grew rapidly to a point. I over diversified, and most of the time, and this is where the lack of education comes in. Most of the time, I will stretch my resources, and somehow, and my focus will be divided, because I'm doing that and that, and most of the time, I'm not able to sit down and do due diligence of the industry or anything that I want to venture in.
Yeah.
If I have any business idea, I just conceptualize the business idea here, go through it, and you find that I don't even rethink the business model. Will it generate income? I will just go and burn those millions. I burnt a lot of millions. And now, but I think I was very fortunate. I think somehow I will just go back and study. Yes.
And definitely one question says that you mentioned that you read a lot of books, definitely.
Yes.
And one person is asking that what is that one thing that you can share that was significant and it contributed to your success coming from reading those books? Yes.
From 2015, because my company, when we started, I started with a cleaning company. We secured a small contract at Unica, Iron and Steel.
The same company owned by Mr. Muhammad.
By Mr. Muhammad.
Yeah.
Yes, he introduced me to his partner as well. What a remarkable human being as well, Mr. Haq. And then the together with their management that time, with their executives, they were so patient enough. They gave me a little piece of pie as a cleaning company. So, but back then, just because I knew I don't have time to go to school, and I tried to venture because they were mentoring me, and they're still mentoring me even today. They are sort of like my business coaches, and then they've been warning me to say, you know what, don't go all over. And now the sad part is this: 2020, when the COVID happened, and that's when I went under all my businesses, and I had to retrench 219 staff. When I retrenched 219 staff, I was going through a hell. And that time I had logistic company as well. But there was a time when I was reading a book. This is the first book that I was reading. And then this book, it was, I think, Billy Graham. In that book, he was talking about, he was actually teaching about the earthquakes and the magnitude of the earthquakes. And somehow he was giving examples to say some certain earthquakes, if they hit here, most of the time you will get lost. And then when he was busy teaching and giving examples and types of earthquakes, and then something struck my mind, and that was just more than enough to blow my mind. And then he said, then he stopped the whole thing, he paused, and then he focused on the survivors of the earthquakes. And then he said, most of the time, the survivors of the earthquakes, they lose sense of direction. And then because everything will be buried under the rubble, and you can see Horomo Nele Soshanguve crossing or Nele TUT, but everything is under the rubble. But now you get lost, you don't understand, or where am I? And then he said there was a guy who was lost after a very catastrophic earthquake, and then the guy, he found himself lost, and he was walking around the mountains. Then he met a very old man, and then he said to him, I'm lost, but somehow I grew up here. I don't know where I am. And that old man gave him the advice of his life. And then he said to him, you know what? If you find yourself lost again in the mountains, even in the future, you don't go down. Always go up. I think that was the first time, because I don't read books. That was the first book that
you actually
made me to read more books. Yes. And then you don't go down, but we all have choices. It's either you go down, you succumb to the pressure, and you feel like you are in the pit of despair, and now you feel like throwing your hands in the air. Most of them, they give up, and that's what I get, depression. And
depression.
And then, but now he said the other choice, the other option that we have, it does not matter how difficult it is. He said you can choose also to go up, because when you are at the reach of the mountain, that's when you will see clearly. So that was the first book, but actually that book had nothing to give me the skill. It was just all about teaching me. Now the first book that gave me the skill, it was the book called by Jim Collins. It's a management book. It's a book called How the Mighty Fall. And that book actually taught me about the stages of decline. It's either in your life, in your career, or in an organization. If maybe you are at the pinnacle of the corporate ladder and somehow you are responsible for running this big organization, and then the book, it's self-diagnostic. It teaches you how to self-diagnose your organization, your business. Remember, this time it was when everything went under. I lost all my businesses. I retrenched almost everyone. I lost my trucks. I lost everything. Yes. And I was going through some litigations. Remember, facing 219 employees at CCMA, and all these kind of things. And I lost my trucks. I was fighting with Asset for Future Unit in Polokwane, the Hawks and everyone. You can imagine. So now I had to now go down, and then I lost everything. That was the biggest downfall. Now the book, what the book taught me, and then it was teaching about or how these big companies that some of them, they had some market cap of trillions or billions of US dollars. How did they go under? And then it was teaching about those mistakes. That was the first book. And the second book that I read, then after I bounced back, because I had to reinvent myself. There was a day when I was so angry, and I said, you know what? I don't have a choice. I just need to bounce back. Now, after I bounced back, then I read the book called, by the same author, anyway, Great by Choice.
Fan of that author?
Yes, Jim Collins.
Yeah.
It's a management book. It's not just an ordinary book. It's a book. It's a research work. And now the book, they researched it. I think it took them some 11 years or so, but they researched thousands or not hundreds of companies. They were going through thousands and thousands, if not millions of pages. And then trying to understand how or why other companies, they do tick, and others, they're so great, but others, they fail. We find that the environment is the same, everything is the same.
You know, I want to be sorry to cut you up, that I want to understand, why did you go into the cleaning service business?
Yes.
There's a lot of businesses that you could have started with, but what clicked to say this business, I'm starting with it?
Oh, the cleaning business, I think, the company that gave us the contract, you know, most companies, what they do is they actually want to focus what is their core competence. And what they do, they outsource what it's not their thing. And I took advantage of that. And, you know, industries, what they do on day-to-day basis during production, they generate a lot of waste.
Yeah, true.
And now when they generate waste, and then there's a need, it's a huge market. I don't know how big it can be, the market, but I can assure you it can be around millions, hundreds of millions or billions in the market. And what I did is I found that this company just want to focus somewhere else, and then they just need someone who can come and do the cleaning. Now, when we were doing the cleaning, it was kind of special cleaning. It was kind of like a maintenance cleaning, because what we do in the process of manufacturing steel, it leaves some scales. And then if that scale is not removed in between the shifts or intervals, then there are breakdowns. Then they gave me that opportunity to clean their rolling mills. And then when I was cleaning their rolling mills, and then afterwards, and then they said, you know what, we want your company to be responsible for our environmental compliance. And that's when I learned a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yes, and then every day I even learned how to segregate the waste, how to manage the waste. And in exchange of that, and then that's how I was able to build a very big business. Because as long as, Mr. Madisha, there's something that someone is not willing to do himself, and you are willing to do that, and someone is willing to actually pay for that, then once you tick those boxes, then already you are in business.
You're already in business.
Yeah, that's how I started.
And I think everything is attributed to those mentors you mentioned, Mr. Muhammad and all of that. I just want to understand now, since we're speaking, you did mention that they are your mentor.
Yes.
How important do you think it is for one to have a mentor, especially whether business or eventually, ideally so? How important is a mentor?
No, it's very important, because I at first I didn't listen. That is why I went under. That is why I lost everything. I lost all businesses. They shut down and everything, because they will come and guide you. John, don't do this. This is what you must do. Because these people they walked, they journeyed this path before you, and they've been around. They know what to do, what not to do. They assimilate the knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's very important for one to have the mentor or to have a coach.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I was still on the books. Somehow I can say even Jim Collins was my mentor.
Okay, yeah.
Because, and then after reading his book, then I realized that, no, you know what, I can be great here. Because the book was all about being great by choice. For you to be great, it's
a choice.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
They
say what you don't change, you choose.
Yes. Then I went through the whole book. Then I realized at the end that no, actually being great, it's all about being choice.
Yeah.
It's all about making right decisions, and it's a choice.
Yeah.
Then fast forward from that book, then I wrote, and then I was reading Good to Great, same author,
You are a fan. You are a fan.
Yeah,
you
I'm
are
a fan.
You are a fan of that
Yes.
guy. But with that being said, hold that thought. Will definitely come back. And when we come back from this ad break, I'm gonna read or list for you the type of companies that Mr. Makopo does have. Definitely, I think 8 if I'm looking properly at the paper that I'm holding. But please don't go anywhere. We'll definitely be back after this. Definitely 25 minutes before the hour 9 o'clock, and we'll be jumping ship and giving this hot seat to Dire William Masenya for the date night show. Once again, let me remind you that if you just tuned in into your radio station, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to TUTFM 96.2, amplifying voices, empowering lives. And this is the Groundbreakers, the first edition of Plug and Graduate for this year, 2025. I definitely believe that this year is going to be a great year for us. And remember, we are speaking to Mr. Kabelo John Makopo, who's then a man of many businesses, one can definitely say. And then before we then take some questions from our listeners, you did then ask for a short period of time to then finish up what you were summing up about your books. Please do go ahead.
Yes, because I just want to illustrate the point how important the skill or knowledge for someone to upskill, to always study. Now, I think my third book this time around was Great by Choice, and then with the same author, Jim Collins. Then
have to look up that.
Please do, because
books, man.
Now somehow you will start living the life of significance.
Yeah,
it does not matter the circumstances around you, so your mind changes, and then it teaches you how to say no. You know what? It's just the excuse. It's not about luck, because the last chapter of the book talks to luck to say, is it because some other people are so lucky, or other companies where they're so lucky for them to be this great, and then the whole chapter now, it's all about to say no, it's not about luck, because now they analyzed all these companies fundamentally, so for more than 15 to 10 years, 15 to 20 years, almost 2 decades, and Legabaro lucky cannot be that consistent every day for 20 years.
Definitely.
2 decades.
Hard work is needed.
Yes. Then from there, and then the other book that I read with the same author, Jim Collins, is From Good to Great.
Yeah.
The first chapter talks about how good being the enemy of great. Actually, the chapter says good is the enemy of great. Right now, we don't have this great athletes, principally or largely because we have this good ones.
Yes, yeah.
We don't have this great soccer teams that can compete
because
on a global stage, because simply because we have these good ones.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't have great doctors, we don't have great hospitals, and because we have good ones. And then that book teaches you how good or being good can be the enemy of great.
Yeah.
Yes. But also the book teaches you how to actually transition, to make that transition from just being good or being good to great.
Definitely. As TT, that's the new slogan. We are moving from good to great. Yeah.
Yes. And then from then I was able to go back, rethink most of this business unit strategies, and rethink individually. So every business that I do have, their business models, and then I managed to do away with those that were just bottomless. And you find that you make a lot of money somewhere, but you come and finance these ones that bleeds the whole money out.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then because I wanted to build this legacy business to become great, a group of businesses.
Yeah.
Yes. Then the other book that I read from there, and then it's Built to Last. Like I said, I wanted to build businesses that will last, that will outlive me.
Definitely.
And then it's the same author also. They're Built to Last.
Yeah.
So now what I do is I encourage people to read. I encourage everyone to read. But if you have a chance, please go to school.
Yeah.
Because if you go to school, then you will understand, you will avoid some of the mistakes that we did.
Yeah.
You will be able, how do you now build a business resilience with such a strong balance sheet, and how do you do that if you don't have education?
True.
You understand?
Yeah.
Yes. And then now I think education plays a very pivotal role.
They used to say is the key to education is the key
no,
to
it's
success.
still. It is. It's still, yeah.
I feel like they're changing the locks.
Yeah.
When you get in there, it's something else. But we definitely believe that education is power.
No, education is power.
Yeah.
And don't feel somehow if you do have the education and and you were never given a chance to exhibit whatever that you learned.
Yeah, true.
Yes. And that's all what I can do. I can say I actually encourage people to read more books, especially if you somehow you are at the driving seat of a lot of companies. Yes, or any company. You're in a corporate space, or what you do, you're still a new graduate, and you're going there into the workspace. You see, most of the books that you read will give you that practical knowledge for you to apply. Maybe you are a graduate, because when I got the invitation, somehow I did understand the strategic intent of this show. And then they were saying, we just want to somehow get the graduates to be entrepreneurial and be, most importantly, be work ready.
True.
Yes, if you don't have that platform, what you do, read books that will actually help you not only to approach things from theoretical context, from what you learned in the classroom.
True.
Yes, that's the courage that I can give to everyone. But education is it's more than important. Yes.
And now to come in, you do have the sub-series and divisions. One, which is Makopo Engineering. It's a division focused on providing innovative engineering solutions to various industries. Panso Investment, a subsidiary that managed Makopo Holdings investment portfolios. Makopo Consortium, a major player in the transportation sector, specializing in the transportation of coal and chrome for mines. Makopo Industrial, one-stop shop for high-quality bulk industrial supply. Internet cafe. Makopo Properties, Makopo Steel, 8 companies.
Yes.
Definitely want to ask, any opportunities for graduates within these 8 companies?
Yes. Firstly, let me give the background how I came about those companies. Opportunities are there. I will share what are the opportunities within this consortium of our businesses. Firstly, we started with cleaning 2015. The 2nd of February this year, we're celebrating 10 years.
Ooh.
Yes, and back then I was still a current boy when I was starting out. And now what happened? Fast forward 2017, the very same directors of Unica Iron and Steel, they introduced me to some companies, their friends in the same industry, and somehow we were delivering some solutionist. We were more of a solution to managing their environmental compliance and everything. And somehow they introduced us to one of their friends, Mr. Sachin Ahuja, and he had 3 companies that time. They are in Al Road, in Albertine. Then they introduced us there, and then they became our second client. We were doing the same thing.
Cleaning services.
Yes, and that's how we came about Makopo Engineering. Because when we were there, then that company started to outsource even the production side of things. They were teaching us how to run the production, how to manage the rolling mills and everything, apart from just being a cleaning company.
True.
And I wanted to actually manage those because they were special services. I wanted to manage that from a different entity. So that, because now this one, actually, even though the idea Makopo Holdings is to be an investment holding company, but now I had to register an engineering company now, because we're no longer just a cleaning company. Yes, and we were helping them on in their rolling mills, and that's when we employed over 219 people at that time. And fast forward, we registered that company 2017, and now the company now is contracted to Unica Iron and Steel. And Unica Iron and Steel, somehow they were able to build us to where we are now, to this big, because from 2021, then they give us this big contract, and we are quite sizable big company. And through Unica Iron and Steel, through this opportunity, now we employed over 300 employees. Yes, we're managing over 300 employees. We're feeding 300 families on day-to-day
basis.
Yes, and then challenges are there, but somehow, if you do have this mentor, if someone is there and he's actually giving you all the resources, you do have the resources at your disposal, and they're teaching you, they're giving you all these things. Now it became such a very pretty amazing journey.
Yeah.
Then that was Makopo Engineering. Then what I did is, as and when I grew, then I understood that actually my business model, it's not that sustainable. I need to actually diversify, given the fact that the industry that we are in, the steel industry, especially South African steel industry, it's I cannot say it's going under, but now it's still feeling the pinch of a lot of things that happened
in the past.
And somehow it's bleeding a lot of jobs. We're sitting here as Elemental, the only primary producer of steel that we have as a country, which is quite systematic. The company is quite systematic in the industry. Without that primary steel industry, there's nothing that you can do. Now, it's retrenching 3,500 people, direct jobs, and indirect jobs over 100,000 of people that will be affected. And the industry is going down now. Yeah, and then I tried to study the industry. Then I realized that our biggest peak then, it was in 2006 when we used to produce at least 0.8% of the world steel consumption.
Yeah.
But now we're sitting at 0.2. You can see the decline.
It's too much.
It's the biggest decline.
Yeah.
And hundreds of jobs
are lost.
From then until now. The industry, we lost hundreds, if not millions of jobs in the industry alone. And this industry is the industry which is, even if you can want to revitalize or reindustrialize the economy, you cannot do. Then I've been rethinking about the whole thing to say, you know what, if you can have only one business and you master only this. Now, and I've seen some trends that can affect us. Then I've decided to say, okay, let me also venture, because our business model, it's not that sustainable. Then I said, no, let me venture into other industries. But I need to be quite careful not to over diversify.
Yeah, true.
Because I need to learn from the mistakes that I did.
Yeah.
Yes. Then that's when, and then I came up with Pantsu Investments. Pantsu Investments is just an investment arm. And what we do is we have a share portfolio. We buy shares in a stock exchange. It's just a strategic way
JSE.
of. Yes, the thing is, when you still have this ability to earn something, what you do is you need to somehow have, because the aim is to build a bankable group of businesses. Yes, and then I need to now at least make sure that we have this liquid asset parked somewhere. And then what we do, whatever the profits or proceeds that we realize from other businesses, then we invest them.
Yeah.
And then I'm learning because I'm the one who do those fundamental analysis as to which stock do we buy and everything, because now I teach myself a lot of things. Then fast forward, the next business is
Mr. Makopo, I have to stop you there. Looking at the course of time, I want to take some questions coming in from our listeners, because they don't complain, because we're doing this show for them. You say, the show came to an end, we didn't get some of our questions across. But then after that, given these questions, only 5 questions, from then I'll give you that platform. Just want to take these questions from our listeners. It is definitely 12 minutes. Make that 11 minutes before the hour 9 o'clock, and we'll be giving this hot seat to Dire Masenya. Now, we've got questions coming in from our listeners. Number 1 is coming from Austin Maluleko, is coming in from Sosha Nguve Block M. It says, now, how did someone who was once homeless have such an achievement? I am so impressed. Please tell us your secret.
The secret is only one. Be the epitome of not giving up. Against all odds. The second thing is, don't let the systems of this world to validate your existence. Yes, to say, okay, just because you are a homeless person, you don't have formal education, you cannot make it.
You cannot make it. True.
You cannot make it. That's. I think those were my secrets. And the other thing, I just said, you know what? I need to flip the script around, upside down, and rewrite this narrative or debunk this myth. That one need to be this or coming from. And then that's and I did not want to let those things to limit me.
I love
that's the first secret.
I love that. There's a Mr. Mishak Rentane. Rentane, I always have him on my show. He's my political commentator.
Yes.
I always quote him. He says, there was a quote he said, history will be very nice, be nice to me because I'll be the one writing it.
Yes.
So I take from there. Now, second question comes in from Fortunate Moyo, who's coming in from Pretoria CBD. She is then saying, in this disappointing economy of ours, how do we then even create sustainable jobs?
Oh, what a beautiful question. It's just that we're running out of time. Right now, as you see, as much as we can try to create jobs, we're bleeding more jobs as our economy now, it defeats the whole purpose. But I think we can only create sustainable jobs through small businesses. There are economies in the world that are so strong that do not rely in government. So now we cannot afford as South Africans to allow government to be the biggest employer. We can only create sustainable businesses, sustainable or create jobs through small businesses. Small businesses, I think, are so central.
The backbone of this economy.
This economy. But it's quite unfortunate. It's just that we don't have time. There are a lot of things that South Africa, for us to be able to create those jobs legislatively, so they need to relax. Some, of course, somehow they are a red tape. Yes, it's quite expensive, very intimidating, such a difficult thing to have an employee in South Africa. And now, because now you will be trying to run this business, and then somehow I know it's so inevitable, so much unavoidable, and so much natural. There's no way you can run a business without having problems.
True.
But I think our labor legislation and other things, they just need to be relaxed. Yes, and yeah, that's what I can say. But we cannot afford to have economy whereby 18 million people rely on grants.
True. Oh, sad.
Yes.
And now the third one coming in from Katlego Malepa from Pelindaba. It says, now how can one start building definitely an inclusive environment around themselves? How do they uplift themselves to that standard?
Yeah, number one, it's quite easy. What I did, which was part of my strategy, was the moment I get started, and what I did, I made sure that I built an ecosystem of great people. Yeah, what I do is I learned from these people, and somehow is you don't stop. What you do, you don't stop. What you do is once you start, and then you don't stop learning. But the most important thing, because you may not have that social capital, you may not have all these kind of things, for you to be able to build from scratch with zero. Now I think we are quite sizable. We've got, we managed to build a multi-millionaire group of companies because of other people. I think what I can say to encourage them is for them to build to this far, you really need to build an ecosystem of great people. Once you have those relationships, then you monetize them, you commercialize them, and then out of them, then you will realize something.
And the second before last, Jimmy Malapile from Soshanguve Block VV says, I am someone who is from a very strict family, and the parents want to control each and everything that I do, but I want to follow my passion of being an entrepreneur. How do I convince them to leave me alone instead support me?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing. Somehow our parents, they feel like myself now, I'm trying to build, and there will be a day when, I'm not saying being a DJ is a bad thing, but I will be hoping that my sons will step into my shoes.
True.
But now, what if they choose to be a soccer player? And then he can say, no, this is my passion. I want to follow my passion. I want to become a DJ or anything. You cannot choose for them. You just let them become what they want to be. That's what I can say to the parents. Yeah, you let your kid be what he can be, and they will, whatever that they excel. Because the only way, the other thing to, the other thing for you to survive is to actually do what you love.
True.
What you do have the passion the most. Otherwise, you will be this dysfunctional person and you're just doing it for economic reason.
True.
So let your kids study, do whatever that they want to do. If they want to journey this path of being an entrepreneur, let them do so.
Yeah. And the last question for this evening, Jack Manamela from Soshanguve, Block LVV, says, how can I commit to one profession and only that one because I keep on changing one after another? How can I make myself stick to one profession?
There's one thing that I've learned when I was reading these books. It's called the hedgehog concept. And somehow the author was giving example of the hedgehog and the fox. And then he was saying every time when they fight, the fox jumps around and apply a lot of tactics, but it doesn't master any of those tactics. And the hedgehog does every one thing, and it's best in the world at doing that thing. And I think I've learned also from me to jump around, going into different things. Because in the book that I told you about, they talk about undisciplined pursuit of more.
Same author?
Yeah, same author, which was actually a demise of a lot of companies. You find that this company jumps around, it's in this industry, in that industry, even if it's in one industry, what they do, when one product is still on developmental cycle and then they launch another product, So now I think it's better to focus on one thing and one thing alone. And then it's only, I'm not saying to diversify, it's a wrong thing. But only do it only when you know that now the first one, you were able to get it off the ground and it's commercially available before you can move to the next thing. People, they move to the next thing and jump to the next thing, to the next thing. And then a decade later, it's nothing tangible they've built. Yes.
Mr. Makopo, I definitely think that was the last line of questioning. Definitely have to say thank you so much for making time to speak with us. But because I see that we still have a lot to unpack and there's a short of time, we definitely speak to Liseja to call you on Liseja's Reflections. He has a podcast that side. So we'll definitely be able to have a proper sit down on the podcast and reflect on everything and unpacking it. But for us on the Groundbreakers, the time has come to an end. I have to move from this hot seat and give to the gentleman that is walking in. But I have to say thank you so much for making time to speak with us. A very touching story that you shared. Nearly cried at one given moment of time when I was listening, and even those guys were saying this, hey, it's a very sad thing, but we are very proud that you have then survived everything of that and came to be the man that you are, who's owning almost 10 companies. So with that being said, thank you so much for making time to speak with us this evening.
Thank you very much. I really much appreciate